Okay, hey everybody. Again, Chris Eckel here with the IFMA LIC. I sit on the board as the Secretary of the Legal Industry Council. We're very excited to have Anthony Davies with Forest Solutions give us a very, very timely presentation today. We'll go ahead and do a couple of quick housekeeping items, and then I'll turn it over to Anthony. The webinar and the recordings will be posted, and it will be on ifmalic.org and the IFMA LIC Engage page. Everybody will be muted once we start the presentation. If you have questions for Anthony or anything else, please post those in the chat section. That would be great. Everything seems to be good on our side. Not technologically and IT wise. If you're having problems, it may be on your side. Maybe you check internally. I want to go to the next slide to thank our excellent, wonderful sponsors for the IFMA LIC. See Forest Solutions down there as a gold sponsor. We also have Doc Solid as a longtime LIC diamond sponsor. Likewise, Maptician is a longtime platinum sponsor of the LIC. And the last group, it actually says Forest Consulting. I just caught that. It's actually Fortress Consulting is a second gold sponsor for the LIC. We really appreciate our sponsors. They mean everything to us and our members. So thank you for your support. With that, Anthony Davies is the Chief Revenue Officer with Forest Solutions. He's presented to our group before a couple of years ago. Always has good, timely, usable information. So with that, Anthony, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. I hope it is timely and usable information. That's what we try to do. I see some familiar names on the webinar and some that I've not met before. So I'll do a quick introduction to myself, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how the central office services have evolved, the document services have evolved as we've gone through adapting to the new normal, and start talking about the introduction of what we're seeing as and we're calling centers of excellence, which is helping to optimize the service delivery across firms, especially firms with multiple offices. We're going to dive specifically into the digital document center and the hub and spoke model that we're seeing more and more that's helping to optimize resources and really tap into the digital workflow that is becoming more and more prevalent in law firms. Quick introduction to Forest for those that you don't know. Those that you do, I'm sure you'll be pleased to have an update. We will always be the first on-site, the first organization to combine on-site outsourcing and staffing. Our focus has always been delivering on-site services with a real focus on people and process. And we do that because at our core, we have a staffing business. We have dozens of recruiters based across the country helping us to staff. And we're now running at well over 2,000 employees. We operate in almost every major city and across the US and Canada. We're now working with 30 top 200 law firms. For those that I spoke to a couple of years ago on this forum, you'll probably note that that's grown a lot over the last 2 years. We've added about 20 in the last 2 years, 20 law firms, and also in that time period, we became certified as a veteran-owned business. Steve Forrest, our founder and CEO, along with many other people in our organization, served in various armed forces. So just to summarize that, we're operating in over 100 cities. Just to double down on the legal piece, as most people on the call today are from the legal industry. We work with 30 law firms. That means we support around 100 locations for law firms, and almost every single one of those has some kind of document center, some bigger than others. Some are these hubs and some are these spokes, but yeah, running about 85 or so document centers across the US for law firms. So a lot of the insight that I'm sharing today is based on innovations that we've implemented in some or most of these law firms as we try to keep up with the ongoing changes in the industry. So what's been happening now? For those of you that's seen my presentations before, I always like to start with a castle diagram. Castle, obviously the one of the most recognized brands for the swiping in and out of offices. And this, by the way, I'm not educating anyone here. Everyone knows that no one comes to the office on a Friday anymore. And actually the busiest day of the week is now marginally Tuesday ahead of Wednesday, and Tuesday in 2024 is not as busy as February in 2020 was. Fridays in 2020 were. So we know this. We know that the new normal is 2 or 3 days a week in the office. We know that some partners don't come to the office at all. And this isn't a big surprise. But where this has impacted us in terms of delivering central services is that the legal industry was on a move to reduce the amount of paper, reduce the number of pieces of mail that are coming into the building. But that obviously massively accelerated when we went to fully hybrid, and we've come back to a new normal. And some of that volume has come back in printing and in mail, but it's generally on a downward decline, a downward trend, and that creates challenges and it creates opportunities. The opportunity really is to accelerate the amount of digitization and accelerate the role that the central document team plays in digitizing pieces of mail, digitizing records, and integrating that workflow with the digital platforms that are becoming more and more prevalent through law firms, document management systems, and then operating systems like the big one actually over the last few years has been ServiceNow. I was at dinner with a ServiceNow consultant last night, and he reckons that about 40% of the AmLaw 200 are now leveraging ServiceNow for some level of workflow and automation. And it's really about an increase in digitization to improve workflow and optimize the experience that clients have with the law firms. And the digital document center, it sits in the center of that. So as we've seen volumes decline, what we've seen is the traditional model where we had maybe 6 different discrete departments: the records department, opening records, digitizing, and moving boxes to and from offsite storage; the office services department, which was mail, print, copy, and then document services, Word documents, transcriptions, making PowerPoints, admin support, time entry, intake, expense invoice. And within all of this is support for the admin department. So there's some word processing, but these were all discrete, siloed departments before COVID. And what we've seen is an increasing integration of these departments into 3 areas. So if this slide works, the records and office services moving into what we call the digital document center, and the document production and admin support services into what we call the admin support centers, and all the front desk and hospitality and concierge and facilities services and meeting room management into what we branded as the WPX, or Workplace Experience Center. Now, many of you that have heard me talk before have heard me talk a lot about the WPX, the Workplace Experience Center. I don't intend to talk too much about that today. I think we all know that that there's been huge investments in real estate and amenities and creating these kind of elevated services to either attract people back or increase engagement for people that are attending the office more often, help make the space more flexible. But what we've seen is, by combining the front desk services, hospitality, and additional support services into one big team, the workplace experience team, we get a lot more optimization in terms of staffing schedules and skills and training, et cetera, et cetera. The second one, the admin support center, document services, operational support, concierge services. Um, whereas before these were often siloed, by combining these two and creating document production centers. Now, but just I'll throw in here, a lot of firms have leveraged nearshore and offshore providers to do these type of services. But what we've seen in the mid-sized law firms, that increasingly these services are being centralized on site and often delivered on site. We've certainly had a few successes convincing law firms in the mid-sized law firms, so sort of AmLaw 100 to AmLaw 300, that sending these sort of services to shared centers, you're competing with the really big firms for their resources and their time. And actually, there's a model to do this on site, to create the support centers within the firm's real estate. By the way, my technology is working, but I can't see if there's any questions. So just stop me if I can't see the chat box. Stop me if anybody has any questions. And then finally, really what I want to talk about the most today is the emerging digital document center. And that really is combining mail, print, records into one big center, either one center for each location, or increasingly in the larger firms, creating hub and spoke mail and print centers, so that the staffing schedules can be optimized. In the previous example, what we've seen, and we still see every week when we go to a new law firm that still is looking at these as siloed departments, there's not enough work to keep each department completely busy. And often people are sitting around underutilized, but they need to be there for the busy periods. By creating these document centers and these centers of excellence, if you like, and combining mail, print, records, scanning, all in one big area, we've been able to optimize the resources, optimize the training, and really deliver a much more dynamic service to our law firms. So I'll talk a little bit more about each of these as we go through. There's a big emphasis in this model to move from it being a simple mail delivery service to a fully secure digital mail center. I'm going to talk a little bit about DocSolid, who's also one of the sponsors of IFMA and a company that we work with to provide very secure digital mail solutions. And the mailroom then becomes the center for the initial capture. Remember, we're talking about attorneys that sometimes are never in the office, but the mail needs to get to them. And I'm sorry, scanning it and attaching it to an email is not a secure way of delivering mail to anybody. Secondly, the whole concept of hub and spoke, centralizing large-scale print jobs, leveraging the distribution network to satisfy longer turnarounds, but then enabling local production for fast turnaround and smaller jobs and less complex jobs. I'll talk about that more in a second. And then the digitized records, leveraging the same software really, to digitize records and move away from that hard copy files that are transported to and from the offsite centers, moving to a more digital first approach. So we no longer call it a mail room or a copy room or a records room. We're now calling it, increasingly calling it the digital document center. And that sits at the heart of the firm's digital document strategy. I'll pause for a second. I don't know if there's any questions at this point. As I say, I can't see my inbox. I don't know what I did to my Zoom before I started, but I'll keep going unless someone speaks up. So the key to establishing these digital document centers is understanding your resource capacity, looking at all of the requirements across all locations and combining it into a central location. If you have a high percentage of jobs that are very fast turnaround, then there's options to do that locally, and there's options to do more self-service. But what we often see is that as long as the turnaround of a role is of a print job is sort of in the 12 to 24 hour range, there's ways of doing it centrally and distributing it. Workflow management is becoming a big opportunity for us. And as I mentioned before, there are ways to submit jobs to a central hub and spoke model, and as many times as we've tried to implement forms or use different systems, more often than not, they come in through email. But leveraging tools like ServiceNow, you can now use AI to turn an email document that comes in for printing, and you can pull all the information you need out of that to create, automated job tickets and really manage the workflow and make sure that jobs are being done and that they're being submitted in the right way. Print submission technology has allowed us to push those jobs to local locations if they're needed in a short turnaround time. And then the other big piece, processing the digital mail in the mail center. I think the next slide, we're going to talk about that, the mail and the records. And then ultimately integration with the document management system and the record management systems. The mailroom is no longer just a place where hard copy comes in, gets sorted and distributed. The mail center is now, the digital document center is now the central point that these hard copy documents enter the digital workflow. And we are enabled to start that whole chain of custody. I do see a question coming in. I don't know how I get to it. Here we come. Yes. So no matter how hard we've tried to push our law firm clients to leverage the job submission portal, there is always somebody somewhere who will do it the way they want to do it. And that's fine. I think the whole concept of trying to fight that and trying to train people and retrain people, I think there's now technology that you can use to turn an email into a job, into a job ticket. Most of the time, the email has unstructured data in that, like, for instance, I need this by tomorrow. I want it, but bound and whatever. That unstructured data can be turned into structured data and the job ticket created, and everything then goes into the workflow. And we're seeing that through ServiceNow. We've done it with Big Hand, and I think ServiceNow is going to win the battle, by the way, for law firms, but that's a personal opinion. It's there's a lot more AI and automation that has allowed more flexibility about the way that jobs are submitted. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, so the mail and copy center is no longer a mail and copy center. It's the digital document center. It's the center of it's the point at which data starts to enter the workflow, and the way in which we've tended to do that in big law firms, and the most secure way, as I said before, scanning a document and attaching it to an email is the most insecure way to scan and distribute a document. You're effectively creating another record when you scan it, and then you're sending it out into the ether, and you lose control. There's no way of controlling who can share that document, who can send it on. So we tend to use Doc Solid. There are other tools, I'm sure, but Doc Solid is in terms of being able to batch scan documents into a workflow. That's been we consider it the most effective. It's all now cloud-based and very easy to implement. But most importantly, what it does is it creates the document in the document and then uploads it to the document management system. And then what you're doing is you're distributing a link to that document rather than distributing that document. You can distribute that link to whoever, but the document stays secure in the central location. I would definitely urge people to look at something like a Doc Solid if you're implementing a digital document center. The digitization piece of the digital document center is critical. I want to talk a bit more about the hub and spoke model as well. So you've created your digital document centers at each of your locations. Maybe you've got 2 locations, maybe you've got 6, maybe you've got 10. In some cases, you'll have more than one print center hub, 2 or 3, depending on the size of the firm. And you'll still have self-serve and on-site support in your local offices. But once you get beyond a 24-hour turnaround, you can centralize these jobs and use a team that's optimized rather than having people sitting around in each location, in many cases doing nothing, waiting for another job. And I know that's not the case everywhere, but we've definitely seen it, and we've seen it a lot more over the last year or so. Locations where they're overstaffed in the satellite offices for the volume of work that they're getting. And what did that look like? So a self-serve job, for instance, which when I say self-serve, obviously we're talking about the local admin support, straight printing, basic finishing, staples, 3-hole punches, an immediate need, urgent turnaround. That's always going to be there. Local MFDs are able to do that. We would still have somebody available on most individual locations to do that 250 to 2,500 page work. Straight print, basic finish, some scanning, endorsements, bait stamping, and then outbound mail, FedEx, USPS, and pouch mail will all be done locally. But once you get above a certain size job and the turnaround time is around 24 hours, maybe a little less, it becomes higher volume, a little more complex, special finishing. Maybe you're doing bulk mailers, maybe you're doing firm-wide materials, large fulfillment, case files, briefs, discovery documents, or maybe this is to support the marketing team. Doing this from a regional hub, or in some cases it's a central hub, where there's a much more sophisticated team and bigger equipment. We've found it to be the very best way to optimize technology, hardware, staffing schedules. And this is the route that we're seeing many of our, especially our larger clients, move to, the hub and spoke model. And as I said before, really the most prevalent technology that we're seeing to manage this, as well as the platforms like an SC Logic that does all the mail and facilities type services. Increasingly now we're leveraging ServiceNow or Big Hand to build bespoke workflows that allow us to tap into the platform that the rest of the firm is using and really help to accelerate that, as they describe it, the time to revenue. by automating a lot of the processes from client intake all the way through to invoicing and billing. Really, the phrase that we keep hearing over and over is we're trying to improve our time to revenue. We're trying to improve the time it takes from when a client comes to us from the point at which we bill them. And the best way to do that is with automated workflows, digitization, and we're sat right in the middle of all that. So coming up to about half an hour, I want to leave 10 minutes or so at the end for questions. But in summary, the hybrid schedule is the new normal. We know that. That has driven the need for more digital delivery and digital workflow. At the same time, mail, copy, and print volumes have fallen. And that has resulted in siloed service teams that are often overstaffed. Typically, by implementing, we were talking to a firm recently that we believe by implementing 2 hub and spoke models, we're looking to save around 20% of the staff. You couldn't make that saving without implementing the hub and spoke model, because there's still enough volume to keep a central print room busy, but not enough volume to keep the siloed individual print rooms. Do I think mail, copy, print will continue to fall? The answer is to that, yes, I do. We're seeing it falling in every location, and I think the increase in the digital workflow through the things like ServiceNow, digital through the workflow through the whole law firm will increase the number of the amount that people rely on digital documents rather than hard copy. Will it ever disappear completely? No. There's still many people of every generation that like hard copy, like to read from hard copy, but certainly not in our lifetime. We're going to move away from it completely, but it just continues to decline. So and ultimately, it's being driven to a large extent by this time to revenue. The more you can keep it digital, the more you can keep that workflow digital, the easier it is to create robust processes for managing client matters and client billing and client collections and improving that time to revenue. And we're in the middle of it. The WPX, the Centers of Excellence, specifically talking today about the Digital Document Center, but also the Document Production Center. We're in the middle of it, turning those hard copy documents or creating documents and turning them into digital documents where they enter the workflow. And then, as I said before, the hub and spoke models that enable us to actually optimize headcount, optimize staffing schedules, create a lot more cross-trained, a lot more Swiss Army knife type people, typically driving 20 to 30% cost savings when implemented really effectively. Certainly, some of our longest serving clients, we have fewer people on site now than we did 5 years ago, and we see that trending as well. To offset that, of course, the WPX Center, the Workplace Experience Center, to continue to grow as the more softer services, hospitality and concierge type services become more and more in demand. So that's hopefully that's been useful. Anybody got any more questions? I'd be happy to answer.
It's Chris, Anthony. You talked about this to a certain extent, but are law firms still sending digital work offsite to the law docs and the Integrions of the world? Has that business continued, and is that something that y'all provide as well?
We do not. We don't really leverage any. I mean, we've for most of our larger clients, we've created document centers on site, leveraging their existing real estate. I mean, I remember I got into this industry in 2001, working for Pitney Bowes Management Services in London, and they were big production centers that they would send it to. But I think the volume is down so much, and the capabilities of the equipment that you can put into an on-site print room are at a level that there's less of a need for it. We don't offer it. We build the facilities within our clients' locations, and with the way volumes have kind of dropped over time, there's less of a need to send it elsewhere.
Thanks.
I'll give you all half an hour back.
One just popped up from Phyllis.
Phyllis, are most of your clients still using cost recovery systems? If not, how are they tracking hard costs and the total cost of case, particularly in litigation? I mean, there are still cost recovery, some clients using systems for cost recovery, but we're just seeing it drop off more and more all over the place. And the software that's used for the print management often is suffices for that. And what I'm also seeing is, even if they're capturing the costs, those disbursements are being written off. I'd be interested to talk to firms that really still clinging on to cost recovery, but we're seeing it, that is terminally declining. Or if for any reason they are capturing it, it's just to show how much the firm has spent on certain things, and then it gets written off in the disbursements.
Good to know. Do you see, we decided as a firm to not charge USPS, just regular postage to clients. But of course, we, still do FedEx, we do UPS, we do courier charges. We don't bill for copies or prints or anything. Do you see in your clients that most of those major disbursements are still being tracked and billed back to the clients, whether they get written off or not? Things like FedEx, UPS.
Yeah, we don't see whether they get written off or not. We anecdotally we hear whether or not they get written off, but we provide all that information to the client, and they can decide what they want to do with it. And we're actually seeing, uh, as we've implemented more hub and spokes, it has actually helped to increase the amount of FedEx and overnight mail. But we're actually seeing a drop in all those types of packages. It's really about now creating a central hub that enables the digitization and enables that wider digital strategy that many of the larger firms now have. To optimize headcount across the board, all administrative headcount, reduce the ratios of admins, and automate as much as possible. It's all about driving profit and driving time to revenue.
See a question from Emily Harvey.
Yes, it's a good question, and there's a balance. You're moving towards hub and spoke, but worried about losing the expertise as larger jobs get moved to HQ. I think we still have very robust training programs. So at the spokes, if you like, there are people that are well qualified to do the jobs, and in some cases, it determine the hub and spoke. If we're concerned by that, we may end up putting 2 hubs instead of 1, or 3 hubs instead of 1 across the country, so that there's different time zones covered by the hubs. It is a challenge, yeah, and that's where you need that kind of robust learning and development, training, coaching, regional management, because we only provide on-site services as an organization. We have a very large number of directors and VPs who are all well qualified in this area. and oversee multiple sites. So there's always help available. But yeah, I would recommend having more than one hub to begin with to make sure that there's overflow and there's capabilities always available. Well, I'm glad to.
Anybody else? While we have our expert here on these matters.
Well, I'm not about expert, but I'm really making observations about what we're seeing. We have people in our organization way more expert than me. I just probably talk to more prospects and clients, and these are the key trends that I'm kind of picking up. I'm pleased to see that other people are seeing this move to hub and spoke, and I'm sure everybody else is hearing about ServiceNow and Big Hand and automation and workflow and time to revenue and all this type of stuff. And this is an opportunity for us in what used to be like the back office and nobody ever saw us. We're in basement level 2 or whatever. Suddenly we're playing a really important role in all of that transformation. And it's an opportunity for us to, to really shine in this era of the digital transformation in the law firm.
On the topic
Yes.
of automation and AI and the introduction of that in the legal space, how far away do you think we are from AI taking a role in some of like the word processing, document production services for some of like the more simpler tasks like editing and formatting?
Like spell check. Can I include spell check as
Sure, sure.
well, I mean, we have bits of technology. I'd be very happy to set up discussions around and how we support that. I am not the expert in our company on that. We have a couple of subject matter experts. Actually, I was talking yesterday with an organization who have implemented or they work in contract lifecycle management, and it's all about using automation in contract redlining and contract negotiations. And we're trying to figure out how we could use that more in our document production areas. And it's a good question, and I think every firm will have a different answer. I think if you go to an organization like I don't know, what's the big ones like a Legalon or an Ironclad, they'll tell you you can replace all your lawyers tomorrow. But I don't think I don't think we want to take that risk yet. Part of the challenge, of course, is that the underlying content that a lot of these software packages are trained on is owned by Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis. And if you're not training your content on that authoritative sources, you're creating risk. So it's definitely trending that way, though. We're still probably a way off leveraging too much technology other than just the workflow technology at this point.
So Anthony, thank you guys so much, and gals. We really appreciate it. This is all, stuff that we, like you said, read up on, but it's truly helpful to get your insight on this, as a provider of these services and the things that you're doing for your clients. So we really appreciate it. Phyllis has one more question as I was just going through my spiel.
Oh, this is an easy question, Phyllis. Where do you see AI and technology in your field with the future of law firms? So where we are leveraging AI the most, I think, is very similar to where law firms are leveraging AI. We're leveraging it a lot in our marketing, in the way in which we communicate, create thought leadership, the way in which we create proposals and presentations, respond to RFIs and respond to RFPs. We have a huge repository of information, and whenever we go to bid, you guys ask really good questions, and so we've been able to streamline a lot of our process in the same way that I know law firms have. I know law firms are increasingly leveraging AI for that. I touched on it earlier, using AI to improve the job intake, to manage tasks, we're not going to train lawyers to use forms and to use job intake tools. We're going to allow them to communicate with us in whichever way they want, and we then convert those communications using some technology, some AI. And then and a big area that we're leveraging AI is to take all the data that we capture as part of our day-to-day management of services, whether that be just pure volume information on mail, copy, print, records, or whether that be anecdotal information through our NPS tool that we use to measure customer satisfaction, and leveraging AI to really summarize that for us so that it's easy for clients to understand, easy for us to understand. It's all actionable. We can figure out what we need to do better. We can figure out what we're doing well, and really using AI to manage a lot of that. In terms of the actual substantive work, I think AI is improving extremely fast. And to Ian's question, is it at the point where it actually can do the work for you? I'm sure that there is some, but having spent 12 years myself at LexisNexis, I do have, a lot of good relationships with people in that space, and they're working hard to create robot lawyers, but I don't think we're there yet. You're welcome for this.
Likewise. Thanks so much, everybody, on the For Solution side and all of our IFMA LIC attendees.
You're welcome.
Great presentation. Look forward to more in the future. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Take care.
Thank you so much. Have a good week.
Bye.